folks, welcome to the Prepared Homestead. This is Travis. Thank you all for stopping by to watch. Well, winter weather finally got here. Not too bad, about 5-6 inches of snow on the ground, about 12 degrees out. They're saying we could get at least another 5 or 6 inches on top of this, and it is coming down at a pretty good pace. I don't know how well you can see it in the camera, but it's coming down, and at times it's just almost like a little blizzard. So folks, for many of you, you're experiencing this. I think Southeast got their weather the last couple of weeks or so, and now the Midwest and the South and even parts of the Southwest are experiencing cold and even snow. It's a good time to kind of put your skills to the test and do a little training. Something that we do once in a while around here is we do a completely non-electric or non-modern day, and we try to live the full day without electricity, cook, do our normal stuff around here that we do without using lights and any kind of electrical things that we would normally use around here. So it's a good time to kind of put that to the test because if things get bad, there's a good chance they're going to get bad when the weather's bad, and that just multiplies the severity of it. Today I want to talk to you about, surviving in the winter, surviving in the cold. And this isn't so much from a wilderness survival standpoint, and maybe at some point we could do a video like that, but this is more from a preparedness standpoint. So it's cold where you're at, there's snow pouring down, and the grid goes down. What do you do? A lot of this is really common sense, but I don't think that a lot of people actually think about this. They're so used to flipping the light switch on and turning the thermostat up and knowing that it works. For many of you, you've experienced ice storms or certain types of winter storms where the power went out. And it was a wake-up call probably for a lot of you. I've talked to many people that have experienced that long term. We're not talking a few hours or even a couple of days. We're talking days or weeks. And many of you, it was a wake-up call and realizing that, man, I'm not quite as prepared. There's the economy is affecting this also. If you look at gas prices, last week gas prices in one day went up 70% in one day, almost 80. Now it's come back down from that peak, but it's still really high. It's still in the neighborhood of 30 to 40% higher than what it was before it peaked. So we're experiencing higher gas prices. Some of you may struggle to just keep the heat going in your home. So we really need to have a plan for how to survive when it gets cold. Cold is a killer. I mean, heat is a killer too, but cold is a killer in a lot of different ways because when it's cold, really, really cold, it's very difficult to get warmed up. You can't go inside necessarily to warm up if you don't have any heat in there. You can freeze to death inside just as much as you could outside if it's cold enough. So here's a few tips. Number one, if it gets cold, and you can do this now. I mean, if you just want to conserve energy, maybe because, like I said, the gas prices are high, and if that's where you're getting your heating source, you may want to cut back just so that you're not spending as much money, maybe because you just can't afford it. So cut back on the square footage of your living space. And what I mean by that is, let's say you have a 3 or 4 bedroom house, 1,500, 2,000 square foot, or even larger. It doesn't really matter. Cut down on the living space. Pick a couple of areas. Usually the kitchen and living rooms of most houses work well for this. And then just kind of wall off the rest of the house. Put heavy blankets up. You may have to tack them or get some push pins or something, and just kind of move everyone into to that part of the house. It keeps it warmer. You're able to kind of kick the thermostat back a little bit, and it's easier to keep a smaller space warmer than the whole rest of the house, especially if you're going to be cooking and stuff. That generates some heat. And so if you have a kitchen and living room kind of closed off with more people in it and the cooking and all that kind of stuff, it's easier to keep it warm. I mean, there's the obvious things. You have to dress properly. You have to layer up. I am not the kind of person that likes big, bulky heavy clothing. Part of it's just for security. I want to be able to move when I need to move and get to certain items that I carry on my body when I need to. So I tend to layer up. You need to make sure you know what kind of layers to use. Most clothing is made out of cotton, and cotton is great in some ways, but it's horrible in other ways. In wintertime, it's not that great. It absorbs moisture and it holds the cold in. So you don't want to necessarily wear cotton next to your body if at all possible. Wool is obviously the best, most of you know that, but some synthetics work well too. So for instance, like socks, with your feet, you want to keep your feet warm. That's real critical. You might want to wear either a pantyhose or those thin nylon men's dress socks on your foot first, and then layer from there with a wool or wool blend sock. And if you don't have that and all you have is cotton, make sure you have changes in that sock. So if you're out at work, or if you're out bugging out or whatever it is, and you just don't have any wool socks, make sure you have plenty of changes of those socks. And like I said, if it's all possible, put some type of synthetic or blend, sock on first, and then the cotton on top of that. But stay away from cotton if you can. If you have to, and it's really bad, and the duties hit the fan, there's other ways you can kind of keep warm. Something that is done a lot in the homeless communities, they just take newspaper and they crumple it up and they stick it in their clothes in between layers, and it catches air and it helps keep them warm. And that works really well in those situations. Kind of your mobility is not great, but you can still do it. Another thing when you're, one of the big things is your head. A lot of your heat in your body, a lot of your body heat escapes through your head. So make sure you have a good cap on your noggin. When you're sleeping, most of your body heat is absorbed into the ground. It's sucked out of you. So make sure you have plenty of layers underneath you, and if you can, get some layers of Mylar, something that can help really protect you from the cold and your body heat being sucked down into the ground beneath you. When you're talking about how to heat your home, especially because it's different. It's different in a apocalyptic SHTF situation, and it all depends on what's going on. For instance, wood heat is probably one of the best for most people. Most of the country, I understand not all, but most of the country lives in an area where there's usually a supply of trees. And if you live on a homestead, you probably have that. And so wood heat just makes sense. That's how we heat our home. If something happened and I just didn't have enough wood that's already pre-cut and ready to burn, I can go out here and cut trees down. There's dead limbs all over the place. So I know that heat is not really a problem. I just have to put a little effort into it, to get it. And heating with wood is great because it heats you about 4 different times. Cutting it, hauling it, splitting it, loading it in the fire, all that kind of stuff. So that's a great one. But if that's not an option for you, look into other fuel sources like kerosene and propane. These are things that you can store, especially propane. Propane will store a very, very long time. And kerosene, if it's treated, will store a decent amount of time. And you can get either of these types of heaters that will heat your home, and there's a various different types. So make sure you have redundancies. Whatever the heat source that you have, make sure you have redundancies. Because inevitably your main heat source is going to be what's going to fail you. Electric heat, it's a band-aid, okay? So don't depend on it. It uses a lot of electricity, a lot of energy to make electric heat work. So I would stay away from that if at all possible. Especially as a prep. Make sure your house is insulated well, just like you put up blankets to kind of shut off certain parts of your house. You can do the same thing on your windows. They tend to be drafty on your doors. Make sure it's insulated. There's other things that actually insulate pretty well, and that's water. For preppers, you want to obviously have water on standby. And if you stock up on water, that water actually works as a pretty good insulator, and it actually releases heat. It stores heat and then it releases it. So depending on your situation, it's used a lot in greenhouses. You can put your barrels of water around the inside of a greenhouse, and the sun comes in, heats up that water, and at night the water releases the heat, and it keeps the greenhouse at a pretty decent temperature at night. And there's things like that you can do inside your home if you needed to kind of help with that. Staying warm in cold temperatures, a lot of it is mental. I understand that the cold can really hurt you. And depending on your age, depending on what may be wrong with your body, it affects people differently. But I firmly believe that a lot of the cold and the effects that it has on us can be overcome by just your mind. I've seen people be able to tolerate a lot colder temperatures because they're used to it. And the folks that aren't used to it, it's not so much that their body can't handle it, it's a lot of it that their mind can't handle it. So what I suggest you doing is, for instance, like what I would do on a day like today, is I'm not going to just spend my entire day inside in the cold, in the warm, by the fireplace, staying hot. I'm going to spend time outside, and I'm going to push myself. I'm going to make sure that I get cold. Make sure that I know what it feels like for my hands to get numb and my feet to get numb, my body, and then what I would do to kind of warm it up out here, not inside in a heated building. And then when you're cold like that, do things. Are you able to, load your rifle and cycle through rounds and do a reload? Or you're able to draw a pistol, or you're able to pull your tourniquet out and use that? Are you able to, bandage a wound or start a fire with your hands really cold in cold weather? This is something that you should probably attempt to do because, again, you wouldn't be, it wouldn't be too shocking that if, weather is like this, it's really bad, and then things get worse. And you're stuck in a situation where you have to survive, and it's cold, and you're not prepared for that. You've gone out and you've trained on those nice spring and summer days where the sun is out and it's nice and warm, and that's when you've done your training. And now that it's cold and you just want to sit inside next to the fire, well, then that's when things get really bad. So certainly get out and do some training outside. Watch with kids. They love to be out in the cold, and it's something like in their brain, I guess, that it doesn't tell them when they reach that point where they should go inside and they're a little too cold. They're just too busy playing. So you need to be watchful of children. Make sure you take in enough water. A lot of people focus on dehydration in the heat when it's in the summertime, but you can dehydrate just as fast, if not faster, in cold weather like this. For instance, this right here, this is a very dry snow. We've got a very dry air coming through, very cold. And you and your animals can dehydrate quite quickly. Hypothermia can set in a lot faster than you believe. Things like frostbite and even frost snip can happen, so make sure that you're monitoring yourself. When you start to get to where you can't feel things, then you certainly need to get them warmed up. And when you do warm them up, don't do it rapidly. You can damage tissue and nerves. So if you're really cold hands and you go in and you stick them under really hot water, that's a bad thing. Don't do that. Let them warm up naturally and slowly, so that the tissue and the nerves and everything has a chance to kind of wake up, the blood vessels. You don't want to do a rapid temperature change on your body if you can avoid that. Other than that, the wintertime, especially when you're getting lots of snow and lots of cold, there is a danger to it, but you should also get out and enjoy it, and try to push yourself and try to develop a tolerance. I am a firm believer that a lot of people in the modern world, they have spent most of their lives in climate controlled conditions. Their home is climate controlled, their vehicles are climate controlled, their offices are climate controlled. The average person rarely ever gets out and endures what nature can give them, other than when it's really nice out. That's when people go outside. That's when they go to the park or they go on a walk, is when it's nice and beautiful. When the weather is horrible, Most people stay inside, and most modern humans just don't have the tolerance levels to deal with it. So you need to get out and push yourself and build the tolerance levels to tolerate extreme weathers, because if things got really bad and, you know, the duty hits the fan, there's a good chance that you're going to have to be tolerating cold weather and bad weather, and you're not going to have all the modern conveniences to keep you comfortable. All right, folks, I think I'm going to get inside for a little bit. Thank you all for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.